Hey, I'm Tobi from metaFox, and on this photo you can see me delivering a small workshop on how to get strengths into your coaching practice last weekend at an ICF conference. And to some of you, I promised that I would record the essence of that workshop on a small video, so let's give this a try. I would like to start with a small invitation to reflect, to answer the question, what gives you energy? Or maybe phrased a bit differently, which activity do you truly enjoy? Take a minute and ask yourself that question, reflect about it by yourself. Or if you happen to have a partner at hand, like we did in those workshops last weekend, share it with them. And as you can see here, we have a small scale of how energizing do I find this. And let's move from the very top of this scale where you just reflected on now to the bottom. Which activities do you find very draining? Where in the end of the day are you not energized and say, wow, this was such a great day, but you're rather depleted? Also, take a minute to reflect a bit on that. And if you have, share with a partner. This is a practice that we often do also in our metaFox workshops, and we call them strengths spotting. I would like to invite you to observe a bit how was the language in which you described your activity to your partner, or maybe when you thought about it, how vivid did it feel to you? How many examples came to mind? How authentic felt it for you to talk about it? And how was your energy level just talking or thinking about it? Did you maybe even feel a bit energized by the energizing activity? And was it even a bit draining to think about those draining activities? And lastly, what is the tone and pace? Of course, this only works if you were actually speaking to someone. If you make this an exercise for your everyday life, and in particular also for your coaching practice, it can be quite revealing. You train your eye to observe what does my coaching client feel energized by? And this is often also a great hint to their strengths. Because going back to our initial scale, what gives us energy is also often a very good clue for where our strengths are. Another clue is, and here let's extend this axis of energizing versus training towards use. How often do you get to do this? How much are you naturally drawn to performing this activity or putting this characteristic of yours forward in an activity? These two dimensions of energy and use are also what makes a strength according to positive psychology, as it was popularized by Mr. Positive Psychology Martin Seligman and then also built on by other psychology researchers like Alex Linley. He came up with these three characteristics that make up a strength. On the one hand, performance. What are we really good at? What are we successful at? This is the most obvious one that I think most people think of when we talk about strength, but also these other two that we just discussed. What do we find energizing, and how often, how naturally do we get to apply this? Let's park this bit of theory for a second and go back to another reflection. On this slide, you can see a bunch of strength cards from our metaFox Stronger You coaching card set. And I would like to invite you to mentally choose up to 3 cards. Which of the strengths that you see displayed here really bring you that kind of energy and that success that we previously talked about? Give it a minute, skim through the strengths on the slide, and take note of 1 or 2 or 3 for you. Then also park this for a sec, and let's move back to our scale. Again, you can see what do we find energizing and how often do we get to do it. And we now try to fill this graph with our strengths. If we look at the ones that we often do, we are naturally drawn to, we really get to use them here on the right side of the axis. And we also find it really energizing. Then we get to our realized strengths. So things that really bring us energy, that bring us fulfillment, that help us to achieve a flow experience. This is what really makes you, you. And in my personal experience, it has also helped me to really define who I am, to talk more confidently, to give me an idea how do I want to maybe position my personal brand and what makes me, basically. If we look at strengths that we actually get to use a little bit less, so we go to the left here on this axis, then we find the unrealized strengths. These are strengths that still give us energy. If we get to do them, we are still energized. We say, this was a great afternoon, a great day, but somehow we don't get to do that often. Maybe because we work in a role where simply there's not so much room to apply that particular strength. And of course, this is a very interesting field to explore in coaching because this is really what we want to bring out. These are sort of the hidden gems. And similarly, if we actually look at the things that we get to use, but that don't bring us energy, we get to the learned behaviors. So these are things that we often do. Maybe we are even good at it. Maybe we have worked now for 10 years in accounting and we have become really pros at finding errors in documents, checking invoices, really getting into the nitty-gritty details, even though in fact this sort of detail-oriented work is maybe not energizing for us. So this can also be a very interesting discovery in coaching or in personal development in general, because here we can explore in this activity, can I bring in another strength? Is there a realized strength, maybe some creativity or whatsoever that we can bring into this activity that currently is rather filled with our learned behavior? Or alternatively, can we maybe even simply get rid of that activity? Can we delegate with pride and say, hey, can you please help me with that? I realize this is actually not my natural strength. This is also exactly what we want to do with things that we are not drawn to and that don't bring us energy, weaknesses. These are things we struggle with, we don't perform well, we find it draining, and we don't do it often. And maybe some early strength practitioners would have said, oh, well, this is something we don't even want to focus on. I find it's still valuable to look at this. We still want to know also these weaknesses, but we want to be proud of them. We want to say, look, this is not my strong suit, and delegate with pride. And now maybe you can think back to the 3 strengths that you picked here on our previous exercise. So call them back to mind. And let's now try to get them sorted in our 4 buckets of unrealized, realized strengths, learned behaviors, and weaknesses. I expect also, simply because I primed you with the question in such a way, you will probably be here in the high energy part, and consider which of these are realized strengths, and then ask yourself, where can you deploy these much more? Are there even areas where you overuse them? So, for example, is there so much confidence that maybe you even come across as arrogant to some people? Or are there strengths that you've selected that now that you give it a second thought, you don't even use that much, you're not so drawn to them, or there's no room? And then, of course, it can be very valuable to find ways, how can you dial up that unrealized strengths a bit to realize it? Is there a role or an area in your life where you can give room to this strength? Similarly, we can also explore the learned behaviors and look at, can I replace what I'm currently trying to use in this area with an actual strength, or can I somehow make a different kind of change? Or lastly, of course, which are the things that simply I don't want to do, I'm not good at, I'm not drawn to it, it doesn't give me energy. These are weaknesses. We want to be aware of them. We want to delegate and look for other ways how we can solve problems in this area. I hope this small reflection is useful. And if so, and if you want to actually dig much deeper into this, then I also have a small tool for you that we recently launched at metaFox, and this is the Strengths Discovery app. It consists of a small survey, maybe 15 minutes, where you reflect on a bunch of different activities, score them on energy and use. And what you get back is a report with your top 5 strengths, already categorized in these areas of realized, unrealized, learned behaviors, and weaknesses. And as a second step, you can invite your sister, your best colleague, your boss to also give you feedback. You send them a link and they would then fill out the same kind of survey. And this gives you an idea, how do they perceive strengths in me? What can they see that maybe I am not fully aware of? So you shed light on these small blind spots in your strength world. If you like it, then of course you can also do this with your clients, invite them. They would go through this entire journey, and then it can be really valuable for you and your client to explore their report in a coaching session. Give it a try, strengths-discovery.com. I'm Tobi from metaFox. If you want to check out these cards, you can find them on metafox.eu. If you want to try the app, you find it on strengths-discovery.com. And if you learn much more about strengths, then you can also find an entire strength course by my co-founder Max on our community on join.metafox.community. Thanks for listening. Cheers.